answers or responses to 3 minutes. Please remain unmuted until you're called on to speak so that, if there are background noises, we can eliminate those background noises. Feel free to make comments in the chat, and we will do everything we can to make sure that we get those comments up and out there. We encourage you to keep your Zoom camera on. This adds for an inclusive experience in the town hall, and it's helpful to be on camera when you ask the question as well so that we can see your wonderful faces. If your words or actions, of course, are hostile, aggressive, or uncivil, we will have to remove you, as we want to have a very productive experience as we do this today. And so, not to butcher the names, I'm going to ask Miranda if she wouldn't mind introducing the panelists for us.
Of course. So today's panelists, we have Taylor Johnson, the editor for the Nevada Sagebrush and a resident assistant. We have Serene Townsell, member of the Black Business Student Association and the co-president of Enactus. Colin Abram, political science student and mental health activist. Brittany Fagata, president of the Black Student Organization, and Samora Horsley, president and co-founder of Wolf Speaks, Nevada's spoken word poetry club.
Thank you, Miranda. So again, to understand that this conversation could be difficult as people are sharing experiences with you all, but we ask that you be positive, that you're engaging, that you're respectful to all the attendees that are involved. We want to be careful to remind each other that this is an educational experience, a meaningful forum, and we want to take this time to understand how do we engage in dealing with justice and equity. And we look forward to this next hour and a half being a very enlightening and educational experience. So with that, I'm going to ask the panelists the first question. So, what aspect of your identity as a Black student at UNR do you feel are important for your peers to know and understand? Colin, we're going to start with you.
Okay, perfect. So I feel like one aspect that is very important is when I first, as early as Nevada Fit, when meeting different types of people and things like that, a lot of people seem to be confused by the way that I talk. A lot of people thought that I had white parents. A lot of people thought that that I acted white. So just to clear up the confusion for some people who might still have those questions, I identify as a Black American man. I am not ghetto. I am not aggressive. I am not ratchet, and I do not talk white. And no, my parents are not white. Both my parents are African American. They're still together. And no, I do not have too much money for a Black person. Yet, although you may think that I talk proper and talk white, I still am treated differently, although of those circumstances.
Thank you. Taylor, would you like to go next?
Of course. Mainly, I've dealt with issues regarding my hair. Many people don't understand it and will ask me questions expecting me to know everything about Black hair, and it makes me feel uncomfortable about it a lot of times. Also, people underestimate my ability, either just academic-wise or with my writing, which has bothered me, since I believe they think of me as just a average affirmative action person who got into university than someone who worked hard to get here.
Okay. Serene?
Okay, so I had two things for this question. So first, I want people to know that we could definitely tell when we're being treated differently than other people. Even if you think it's subtle or if you think you're not really doing it, we can pick up on that implicit bias. So little story, I had a professor this last spring semester, and as soon as we got to the diversity chapter of the book, I was already getting a little nervous. So we start talking about stereotypes in class, and he asked the class, do we have any examples of stereotypes? And I'm thinking this can't turn out good. But then the professor says, but nothing too Black, nothing negative. I was like, too Black? How does that equate to negative, right? Of course. So that's when I was like thinking in my head, is this when I call him out, but I'm the only Black student in the class? I don't want people to think, I'm aggressive or I'm trying to start things or that I'm being sensitive. So luckily someone else, a white student, called him out. So I didn't have to say anything. But even that, like I could feel people like when they heard that, they looked at me, but they didn't want to say anything themselves except for that one student. So that was my first thing. And the second thing is, I think people think that they're more inclusive than they really are. So I think they think they're promoting diversity and inclusivity just by like allowing Black students into their group or people of color into their like student group or into their friend group, but that's not all that inclusivity is. So just because like I'm a Black female doesn't mean that what my perspective is. So inclusivity and diversity has to be allowing people to be all of who they are and bring everything that they have to the table. And when people think that they know what I have to bring to the table, that limits like what I can do in that group or in that setting. So those are my two things I wanted to share.
Thank you. Bree?
Hi, can everybody hear me? Sorry. So for that question, I personally want people to understand that I'm a student on this campus that has goals and aspirations that I'm trying to accomplish by way of education. I'm an American citizen. My parents are American citizens as well, as long as my grandparents and great-grandparents. So I have a right to an education that my ancestors fought for. So I guess what I'm saying is I belong here and I worked hard to be here just like any other person.
Excellent. And Simone?
Okay. Hi, can everyone hear me? Cool. So I guess the thing I wanted to say for this question is just to realize that Black students have a different experience than everybody else on campus. I've heard like multiple times, it's like people I've been in class with, like, oh, what struggle could you possibly face on this campus? Like, it's so great. And I was like, I literally list like a 45-minute script of like things that like that I struggle with and people of color struggle with on this campus. And so just to acknowledge that our experiences are different is important.
Okay, if we have any questions from the attendees, this is now the time.
I'll ask a question. This is Kevin Carmen, Provost. I was wondering, many of you mentioned examples about being treated differently or feeling like that is happening. Can you give us some examples? Just, I understand I believe, Samora, you mentioned you had several examples. It would be, I'm always useful for me to hear some specifics so that I begin to get a better idea of really what's going on and what you're experiencing.
So some examples I have is like first, lack of representation, whether that's culturally in student government and faculty is important. I would like to see more representation in like the teachers who are teaching me. And then also in curriculum, there's a normalization of cultural appropriation, lack of access to resources, microaggressions, tokenism, students don't feel safe on campus, racism, obviously. We have to deal with stereotypes and have events that are catered to the white experience and not to the experience of everybody who goes to school on campus.
Thank you.
Let me unmute first. Sorry. So because I can't see everyone, if you have a question, just go ahead and speak up. I'll kind of hold off a little bit longer before I move to the next.
So this is Nora Constantino, and I just finished pouring concrete, so I have my camera off.
All right.
I'm a little dirty. But my question is, what can I, as a faculty member in the sciences, so I consider exercise physiology a science, but we're also health, and so we talk about health and all of that stuff. What can I do to make students feel more comfortable and safe in my classroom? Like, what can I do for my students to facilitate that? Because when you say you don't feel safe, that is just horrific to me, and I don't want that to continue to happen. So I know I can't change the entire campus culture by myself, but I can start with myself.
Okay, so kind of in response to your question, I feel like one thing that one of my earlier professors did really well is can go on the broad, whether we're talking about like LGBTQ plus individuals or like Black students, making it very clear in your class that like microaggressions aren't accepted in your class. Like our professor for my communications class said, okay, everyone's going to introduce themselves and their pronouns, and this is what we will call them by. And then he also said, like, we will not hear any racial slurs. We will not hear the N word. We will not hear the F word. If you hear any of those words, you're kicked out of my class. So for me, even just like, I've never had a teacher like allow me to explain myself. My identity has always been told to me more so. So because he gave me like the chance and the opportunity to introduce myself, and he set clear precedents, and he made it clear that if you do any of these things that is not tolerated in your class, it kind of like puts people in a position where they're less likely to do those things.
That makes sense.
I just want to add to that. So I would say definitely watch the language in your class, like watch your own language, check your own implicit biases. It always starts, even in businesses, it always starts from, the top, whoever has the most authority. As long as they're being a role model for everybody else, it's a lot more, the class will run a lot smoother. And also, I would say check the language of the students as well, because in my position, when that was said in my class, I didn't really want to speak up, but I knew I was the only one who people expected to speak up, but I hate being in that position. So if the teacher, I know in this case the teacher said it, but if the professor were to check the students when they say that, that would take a lot of pressure off of the Black students or the whoever is being targeted or getting the microaggression in that instance.
Just to add on to that, I would say just acknowledging who your students are, knowing who's in your classroom, and just getting to know those students in your classroom. And yeah, that's pretty much what I had to say.
I agree. I think making a conscious effort towards getting to know your students who are especially of color would be a good way to show support.
Thank you.
All right. Go ahead, Elizabeth. Go ahead.
Oh, cool. Okay. I just first wanted to thank all the panelists, and everyone who came out. Sharing your experiences I know can be very hard. So I have a great admiration for you all. This is a question kind of going into your experience, Serene, when you were saying in class that the professor said, but nothing too Black and stuff like that. And it did put you in that awkward situation. I was wondering, as an ally, you did have someone speak up for you, but where is the line? Because if something like that happened in when I was in a class, I feel like I would want to speak up, but I don't want to, I do not understand the Black experience because I myself am not a Black woman. I try to be an ally, but I don't want to shout so loud that you guys don't have your voices heard, if that makes sense. So I was wondering, for all the panelists, not just Serene, but where that line kind of is in your guys' opinion.
So in my case, so the teacher said, but nothing too Black, nothing too negative. And then there was kind of a moment of silence, and everyone was like, that didn't sound quite right. And then the student who spoke up, he said, I think it's funny how you said nothing too Black, but we're talking about stereotypes and biases and trying to get rid of that. And so he was very kind to the teacher in calling him out, where I would have been probably a little more mad. So it's probably a good thing that he said it. But even if you don't know if it's your place to speak out, so even if no one had spoken out at that moment, if someone had come up to me after and was like, hey, what he said didn't sound quite right, did that bother you? Or just ask me about it and talk to me about it, that would have helped too, because I realized that other people recognize what I'm going through and that I'm not just crazy, or it's not just like, you know, something that is nagging at me, but is not really, you know, doesn't really exist. So I kind of feel validated and comforted, even if you can't, even if you're unsure of saying something in the moment, as long as you like talk to your POC friends, I think that's good too. So I think that's a place to start.
All right, so we have a question from, well, we actually have two questions, but I'm going to ask the one question. One person has about 20 questions on here, which are great questions. Caprice asks, what is your interaction, this is for the panelists, what interactions with Black faculty or students, Black faculty or staff experiences have had an impact on your experience here at UNR from a positive perspective or a negative perspective? So in essence, having Black faculty and staff been beneficial to you, or is it something that's been challenging for you here?
Hello, can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Okay. For me, it's been a positive experience having Black faculty at UNR, because I get to see educators and faculty members who look like me and who understand me personally. And it's just been a positive experience. Those Black faculty members have also been the ones to reach out to me, ask me how I'm doing in school, what my grades are looking like. So just pushing me to be a better student in general. So it's been a positive experience for me.
I wholeheartedly agree. I'm a journalism major, and at the J School, one of the closest professors I'm with is with Paul Mitchell. He has really helped me, I guess, sort of navigate my way through the journalism field, which is a not so diverse field to begin with, and made me feel more comfortable about it. Even when I was targeted by white supremacists and dealing with all those kinds of issues last September, he was the main one with me through that whole experience. And I'm forever grateful for that.
Excellent. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'll add to that. The Black staff and faculty that I found on campus, they're basically kind of like family to me. There's such a strong support system. Like, I I probably wouldn't be in all the different positions and roles that I'm in. I probably wouldn't be like vice president of BBSA. I probably wouldn't have stepped up to the plate on a lot of those things, just because, you know, I wasn't sure of myself. But having them around and having them in powerful positions made me more sure of myself. So I'm really grateful to them.
Yeah, I would like to add too. I'm pretty much the same thing as everybody else has been saying, but it's so good to talk to someone who gets it. I think a lot of times on campus, it's hard to find people who understand what you're going through. So having that, and they're also always there to like push you. And I've learned so much, especially taking classes with Black professors, and I've learned so much about myself and about Blackness I didn't know before. So yeah.
I would like to also add too, during my freshman year, actually, Taylor Johnson, she was my RA. So luckily, when I ran into racism and different things like that on the university, I knew the first person I was going to was Taylor. And like having that outlet where nobody's questioning you, well, are you sure that was racist? Did you really think that was racist? Like maybe it could have been this. Somebody who actually understood where I was coming from, who actually experienced it, really helped me navigate my freshman year.
All right, excellent. So we need to get to our following question. This is a great conversation and a great start. I want to say what Kelly Cross put up on the board. I hope everyone gets to see. I think those are some great points for allies and how to help advocate for our students. So I'm gonna give us a kind of a sum up to kind of what was said in this question. The first thing is stereotypes. Students want to be valued for the diversity that they bring into a classroom and experience, but when you start to question them, you start to make them seem like they're less human. Hair, voice, and it kind of shows that you have a stereotype that might be even a deficit stereotype of who students should be. Hair should look like this, voice should sound like this, and most times those deficit comes from the whole notion of our view of ghettoized people of color. It is important to understand that there are over 25 different sub-African groups in the United States. So that means that there are various languages, various backgrounds that students are going to come from. And it's challenging to stereotype students into one cultural lens based on what the diversity they bring in. However, there are a lot of cultural experiences are the same, but we want to really try to make it where we're avoiding those type of things, right? Let's not put students on the spot when they're in the classroom. Let's not assume that the student speaks for all of their culture. Allow students to present to you their knowledge in the situation. Access is a very important one. In the 1960s and 70s, access was very important for communities of color. We're at the point now that access is not the challenging thing that we're looking for. It's feeling that we do belong in a place and we feel included as we think about our policies, our curriculum, and everything that we're engaged in. And sometimes we still go from that notion of, well, you're here. That's not enough. It's not the access. It's the other things that come with being a part of that. And and for faculty, it's a matter of setting the expectations in the classroom. Whether you have students of color in your classroom or not, be in a habit of setting expectations of what you expect in the classroom from languages, from respecting one another, etc. Watch your language. Think about the things that you say and how those things that you're saying could be harmful to others. And I know sometimes that with language, we don't think about our intent, but sometimes the words we say will cover our intent. So we really need to think about that. Read facial cues, read body languages of students in your class so you can know how students are reacting to what it is that's being said. And challenging, but rightfully, you have to confront biases in your classroom and not leave it to the students to confront that, even when you know that they're not wrong. You never know who else in the classroom feels the same way that you feel. And for our allies, it's important to have allies. If you're students who are white and you see things that are happening, it's valuable and important for you to speak up so that the person of color that's in the classroom doesn't feel like they have to be aggressive in this. Sometimes when things hit students of color as they're in these experiences, it could feel very emotional. And we know sometimes when things are emotional, it might take away the logical sense of that. So we need allies to kind of help us have that conversation. And finally, the experiences of having a more diverse campus help those who are here feel more of a sense of belonging. And there are things that we can learn from one another about our different histories and culture. While we might have someone who's from Oakland, they might have a faculty who grew up in Georgia. And learning that experience and learning that culture is very important. As Colin mentioned, sometimes when you have challenges, going to someone and speaking to someone without having to explain everything makes it very comforting to know that you have someone to talk to in challenging times. So thank you, and let's go ahead and continue to the next question. I'll turn this over to Miranda.
Okay, thank you so much. The next question that we have is, how can we ensure that conversations are being anti-racist? Oh, I'm sorry. How can we ensure that conversations about being anti-racist are productive and educational? And when we say we, feel free to interpret that as you will, with whichever groups you're targeting when you're talking about how to be anti-racist.
So I can begin this question. So I think pushing the question just a little bit further of instead of like how these conversations can be productive. In my freshman year during Nevada Fit, they went over like racism and things like this, but I still realized like people are still saying racist stuff. They went over that you should not say the N-word, you should not say this, you should not. People are still saying that. So I feel like it needs to go further. It needs to be held some type of accountability for when students of color are like dealing with harassing issues, that there needs to be some type of system in place to deal with the students who, after when they're educated, they still don't want to listen. Like one quick example was during my freshman year, there was this kid who loved to say the N-word, and a few of my friends mentioned like, hey, that's not okay to say, and especially around Colin, it makes him uncomfortable. And then this person would continue to say it over and over while I am there. So like me being me, I'm just like, where do I go now? There's not, to my understanding, I don't really know like what system to turn to like to stop him from saying that. And also it's just like more of just like, I'm just like tired of just hearing it. So I think further there needs to be very clear type of uh, there needs to be very clear, like, I totally went brain dead on what I was saying, but there needs to be clear, um,
Like accountability and maybe even
clear accountability. Thank you. Clear accountability for the actions for people that still don't want to listen. So.
I wholeheartedly agree. I think, though, in that process of making a better conversation around these issues, that marginalized groups needs to be there in the conversation, working on how to make this campus a little better in terms of microaggressions, in terms of just racism, swastikas, all of it. And I think, again, agreeing with Colin that Nevada Fit, it didn't do enough in that aspect. I think by doing more, it can help, but of course that isn't going to guarantee, unfortunately, biases that are so implemented in people's minds that they refuse to let them go. But I think maybe even having a 1-credit class can maybe, and teach them about why these marginalized groups are advocating, why, like, saying these things, it's not effective, they can start seeing how, oh, maybe what I'm saying is actually affecting them negatively when I was just trying to be chill with them.
So I agree with the idea of a class on the education part, but I know that's like a later question, so I'll save my comments for that. But for this question, for the education part as well, I would say if the school supported more like guest speakers or bringing in more professionals to speak to larger groups of people, that would be helpful. I recently had someone reach out to me wanting to bring a speaker to campus for my club, but their speaker's fee is like way more than what we can afford. But of course, the school can afford it. And especially if we open it up to as many students as we can. I mean, I don't know how it'll be with, coronavirus in the fall and everything. But if we just, keep that in mind and try to have the school support people who are trying to work towards these issues, I think that'll make a big statement as well.
I can go. So I guess the big thing for me with this question is be aware of your audience. And by being aware of your own audience, you need to also be aware of your biases and educating yourself about different races and cultures. And that's kind of all that I had for that question. And that's kind of the big takeaway that I got from that question.
Did any of our other panelists want to chip in before we move on to the rest of the audience? Okay, I do have the participants tab open, so if you guys wanted to use that to raise your hand, I am looking at that, but we'll open it up to the audience now. Kelly, did you want to speak?
Yeah, just a couple things very quickly. First, the other faculty on the call, I would challenge you if you, I've heard it repeated many times, but educating yourself, that's the first thing. I think that as a faculty member, we have to continue to learn and grow and be aware that you have colleagues on this campus that actually do research in this area. So you don't have to wander in the dark or try to figure out, I can send out a reading list if need be. The other thing to this point about students using inappropriate language in the classroom, I want to direct my question to the, I'm happy to see the administrators here and on the call. So I'm curious to the administrators on this call, is there something in the student code of conduct that would address a student using inappropriate language in the classroom? And what instruments or tools of accountability do we have as faculty to address that?
Kelly, this is Kevin. I actually can't cite you chapter and verse in the student code of conduct, but I do know that, and Amy, you might want to weigh in on this as well, but that faculty have the right and responsibility to control their classroom. And if there's inappropriate language occurring in the classroom, they have the authority to ask that student to leave or to cease this type of discussion. So that I think faculty often need to realize that this is their environment. This is not a free speech place where you can display whatever hate symbols that you want. No, this is my classroom and I control the environment. And if you don't abide by the rules in my classroom, I can have you dismissed from the class. Amy?
And my name is Amy Payson, and I'm the Faculty Senate Chair, and I also teach in Communication Studies. And I want to just recognize that I've heard from a variety of student groups, as well as from others on campus about some of these issues of faculty in the classroom calling out their students of color and not handling that well. And so I want to just let you all know that that's an issue that I'm hoping that our Faculty Senate Diversity Committee will address this year. Like I said, I've heard it a variety of times. So like Provost Carmen, I don't know exactly where in the student conduct manual that is, but just know that faculty do have that ability to set how they want the environment in their classroom. And as Colin had mentioned, that he had a faculty member that was very clear about the conduct and the ground rules for discussion in class. So I would say that for students on this call as well, if that's not something that is mentioned in the syllabus, if it isn't something that is there, that you should talk to your faculty member about the things that would make it comfortable as an environment in class. And hopefully the faculty are receptive to that, but if not, definitely, you know, reach out to Faculty Senate to assist with some of that.
This is Shannon. There are components of the code of conduct. If you as an individual or you and a group of friends have been specifically targeted with this behavior or this language, that is most definitely falls within the student code of conduct. And we would encourage students to go to the student conduct office and file a report and work with them on pursuing it. Where it becomes a harder issue and is when, and it's difficult for all of us, not just the students, where it's not specifically targeted at a person. So we work very hard with the individual or group that may have been worse than insensitive, harassing, or having an impact on an individual or a group. We don't just let them go away and get away with that behavior. We do have that accountability word that you talked about earlier. We do meet with those students. We do sometimes have a longer term relationship with that individual or that group around the impact of their behavior. Some of you in this meeting today have helped me have some very pointed and poignant conversations with fellow students who have engaged in very overt and hurtful behavior. And so there's yes, conduct is available in many instances, but there are other methods that we do use and will continue to use. So I want to assure you of that. I know Dr. Gordon Mora is on this call, and there is a whole hate and bias and online way to also file your reports and share information so that as our Chief Diversity Officer, it can get into on her radar. And then of course, Title IX.
Which actually leads me to my last question, and then I'll stop. I'm just curious, where are we in terms of a campus requiring a diversity statement on every syllabus that is on this campus in the same manner that we require a Title IX statement and the various access and so in terms of requiring a diversity statement on the syllabi?
I'll respond to that in terms of Faculty Senate. That was a recommendation that was put forth by the Faculty Senate Diversity Committee this last June. I know that those recommendations are being reviewed. Some colleges are already starting to promote their individual units and departments to do that. So that's one aspect that we would want to follow up with this year is that committee.
Okay, I think we touched up on some really important things. We will have to get moving on, but
Can I ask a quick, actually, maybe it's a quick comment.
sure.
When no, I can't remember who said it, about if the student thinks that the language is not as inclusive, they should go to the faculty member. I think that that's problematic, and then it puts the responsibility back on the student. It kind of moves towards the blame the victim sort of mentality. So I think that we have to get a diversity statement in our syllabi, and then that prevents, then it doesn't put the responsibility on the student to say, I don't like the language that you're using before, you know what I mean? Like, we need to do this proactively, and we should not make the students have to go to the faculty and say, oh, could you change the way you talk? Not appropriate.
Yeah, I agree. And I think too, the whole issue with accountability is that discipline especially can be a really gray area because of the free speech argument. And I think clearly what accountability system we have in place at the moment is not effective, because as a lot of our panelists had said, they knew people who had technically been disciplined before for remarks and racist rhetoric, and they continued to display that rhetoric. So, you know, I think this is part of a greater conversation about how do we reform that accountability system, and how do we identify as a campus what our values are going to be and how we're going to enforce that. So we will have to get moving on to the next question. So I'll turn it back over to Dean Easton-Brooks if you want to start that discussion question.
Yeah, absolutely. So two quick comments. First, I want to correct my address to Dr. Kelly Cross. Make sure that I acknowledge that she is a professor and doctor here on campus. Second, as you mentioned about, someone mentioned about just the different things happening on campus and being aware and pooling funds to bring people to campus. That's something that I know the deans and I really talk about when we invite people in, like Dr. Thompson brought in William Tate last year, who is an outstanding person, an outstanding speaker of color. He's now the provost at South Carolina. Those are things we got out to our students to make sure that they were aware of that. I know that social work, and I spoke with the Dean of Health earlier today about some of the things that they're looking at and doing. In the College of Ed, we're bringing someone in as well. And so as deans, we can always get together to find out how do we pull our resources and make sure we respond to the needs of students, and making sure that we're getting that message out, and making sure that our faculty are engaged in those conversations, because they are critically important. So I can speak for the deans and know that this is something that's on the dean's radar, and this is something that the deans really take to heart about how we're doing this as well. Again, was speaking with the dean of health this morning, and some of the things that they're looking to do in their college around how do you make sure that not just we're speaking about it, but our curriculum is responding to it, that we do have a statement in health that's really talking about how do we engage in diversity, but they're even thinking about how do you take it to a different level to make sure that this is how they're responding to the community, and as they're training health professionals, that they understand the inequities that are happening in our society and making those things aware as they look at their curriculum. So deans are really looking at these type of things and how do we engage in these things. But we need to make sure that we let our community know this as well, that our students know that these are the type of things that are happening. So it's these kind of conversations that's gonna really help continue this conversation and move it, all right? So the last question, or lastly, to the panel. So if there was a class that addresses identity of Black people, let me start this all over.
Oh, actually, I think we're on the third question here.
I'm sorry, the third question here. Thanks for keeping me in line. It's not the last question. Here we go. Miranda's on top of it. There have been a concern voiced about the value expressed by certain groups, organizations that have come to speak to the UNR campus. What are some of the ways you can better provide a platform for these concerns to be heard? How can we assure that students are properly informed about the values and the interests of groups that are coming to campus to speak?
I can start this one out.
Okay.
So the first thing I think of when I think of certain groups is the Charlie Kirk Culture Wars event that occurred in October. I was down there reporting, and I literally experienced firsthand people demeaning me, people glaring at me, people acting like they were better than me just because I was Black. But regardless of that, people did not understand, I guess, what they were going into with that. And I think by having, I guess, educating people on sort of like what their platforms truly are is important. When I was doing this story about culture wars with the sagebrush, I uncovered so much stuff that really bothered me. And the, speaking as a Black student rather than a reporter, it bothered me that it felt like the university was like holding them, giving them a platform when other advocacy organizations were saying that they are almost far right. With that being said, I think that more accountability needs to be put on administration and faculty to understand what types of groups are coming here, and how that's going to reflect on the students of color or just students in general. Many of the statements that Culture War and Charlie Kirk hold are racist, are homophobic, are transphobic. You can just look at his Twitter, for example. So I think more accountability just needs to be on administration and faculty with that.
I have something to add too, particularly with that event. When that event was like being approved and like all the clubs came and to get their events approved, I was there as well, and I had no idea like what their organization was about. Just them presenting about it. So I think just even to the point where you just go and get your event approved, there needs to be like more information, just talking about what the event is, because I had like no idea until later on. But I could see that just by like the way they were acting, like something was up. But just like making sure that the campus is informed. I don't think a lot of people knew that these people were coming until like it was already a thing and it was like a week away. So yeah, just.
So I had thought of like a way that I would set it up to make sure like every guest speaker that comes onto campus is in some way like registered and checked and everything like that. But I didn't know, Samora just brought up that they had to present and get it approved anyway. I didn't know we had to do, I've never done that for my club before. So I didn't know there was that process there. But I think to take it a step further, if there is like if the is it the ASUN senators? I don't know who approves it, but if they see that there is potential for that speaker to create conflict on campus, I think they should open it up to where students can come and voice their concerns. So similar to the weekly funding hearings they have, where people can come in and just kind of like not bring up their issues, but they could create something like that to where it's a hearing and people can come and voice why they think the person should not come, or any concerns that they might have. And even if they think the person, or let's see, I guess I don't know all the logistics for how this would work out. I didn't know there was an approval process in the first place, but I think making it just more open to club leaders and the general campus will allow more people to voice their concerns and know about these events before they happen.
Real quick, I'm thinking, I hope I can get the name of it right. I think it was the SEAB meeting. So when you go.
ASUN clubs and organizations.
Yeah.
So is that only if your event is in the Joe Crowley though?
No, that's any event that you hold on campus if you're an ASUN organization on campus. Yeah, you can respond to it, Sandra.
The Student Events Advisory Board, it's not an approval board, is run through the Center for Student Engagement, and it reports to the Associate Vice President of Student Life, who currently is Ramondo Nash. Clubs and organizations, and that includes all of the ASUN entities, and sometimes graduate student groups, go through the SEAB process so that the board can help them better prepare their events, advise them, look at risk management and liability issues. In total, last year, I want to say about 2,300 events went through that board. So that's to give you some context. The board is not an approval board. The board cannot approve or disapprove events based on the content of the event.
Okay, anyone else?
I just want to add something real quick. I think a lot of people don't understand just how, I guess, the aftermath of culture wars was. I know that there was a confirmed Proud Boy there who was trying to stir up fights with students and other counter protesters outside. Um, there was also students who were counter protesting being filmed on Charlie Kirk's Twitter, subjecting them to be attacked and identified. I don't think necessarily like people would have identified that at the time, but it is something to put in perspective in the future. I understand mixing, you have liberal, you have conservative speakers, you need to balance it out for free speech. I understand that, but at the same time, if their platform is hateful, not just left or right, if it is hateful, it should not be on campus.
To quickly add on to that, I would say before groups and organizations are inviting people to come lecture or speak on campus, I would say it needs to be approved by administration to ensure that they aren't a part or affiliated with a hate group. And I would say for that particular event, I personally was prepared because I saw flyers around campus. So I'm not really sure exactly how we can prepare students for these speakers to come, other than educating our students on who's coming and who's going to be speaking at the time.
Colin, anything to add?
Yeah, I would just say I remember the day that Charlie Kirk came. I was like sitting at the library preparing for a geology 103 test, and then I remember like everybody was yelling, and like it was honestly really terrifying. Like the group that Charlie Kirk can bring in was like terrifying to me as a Black person. But as far as to like the platform, I mean, I really don't understand like the process of which it goes through to get approved for people to come through. But it was just very disappointing because like before the Charlie Kirk coming to campus, there was already people on Twitter like protesting against it. There was people like writing to administrators. There was people starting petitions, but it just felt like our voice wasn't heard. And at the end of the night, I actually ended up taking this is the only time I've ever taken it, like a little campus escort thing, because I was too scared to walk to my own dorm from the library. So it just shows you like what it can do to like students of color. We, like Taylor mentioned, like we understand like it's a university, so we should have diverse student input. But when it comes to someone who is carrying that much of a hateful speech, it's very hard for people of color.
And to add on to Colin's like fear of that event, I remember that there was a Able Women meeting that night. And if you guys don't know what Able Women is, it's a women empowerment group on campus that I was a part of that year. And when I was going to that event, I remember in our group chat, they were telling us to be careful walking through the Joe Crowley because of everything going on. They were like, we almost kind of feared for our lives going to that meeting because it was in the same place that event was being hosted. So yeah.
I'd also like to add on that I was on there reporting and having to interview people who you don't know whether or not they want to attack you is terrifying on itself.
Yeah. So I think just a little piece of this, I think, kind of what I'm hearing here is that, especially when you are a group in which you're probably 2 to 3% of the population, and you have what can feel like a mass against you and not knowing who's against you, that could make you wonder about the safety of yourself physically, mentally, etc. And you don't know who are allies and who are not. And there's not a conversation or a message about what this is about, so you're not quite sure where you fit in all of this. So that could be very, very, very challenging to get that. So let's open it up to the attendees and see if you have any questions for the group.
I'm sorry, can I just jump in just one
Sure.
thing?
Sure, Dr. Cross.
I am sorry that you felt that way on this campus. Let me just, can we just stop for a moment?
Sure.
Recognize what those students just said.
Right.
That they were at an institution of higher learning where they pay tuition like everybody else, but they were afraid to be on this campus. And I just need all of us to take a moment and process that.
That's an outstanding point. And even if we can identify that as where the students sit, think about it as a parent or a guardian, and your child or someone is coming to you and saying to you, I don't feel safe. As a parent, that is a tough place to be when your child doesn't feel safe and you don't have access to your child to help your child feel safe. And I think that's some of the underlying trauma that we don't really see, or that underlying stress that we don't really see our students go through. And it could be something that could last for months. And as you suppress it, there are little things that come up that continue. These things are going to happen. I think a good point of this, even though I wanted to conclude this, I want to bring this up now, is that a good point of this is that it's not arguing against freedom of speech, as Taylor mentioned. Freedom of speech is important, and we want to have various voices here because we should be a place that opens up our mind to things. But we should have some avenue to suggest that when it gets to a point of hate, that we need to make a stand on that, whether it's hate against race, LGBT community, women, etc., that we kind of take a stance to that. And that might be something that, we kind of think about as we move forward. How do we help our students to feel safe on campus? So, all right, open it up to the audience here. I can't see hands.
If I can, oh, hello, hi. Sorry, my camera wasn't on earlier. I was dealing with my child, but I think that one of the students kind of alluded and touched on this point is that their organization may not have the funds to bring certain speakers to campus, and I think it's very important to realize that those are systemic issues. Is that while some of us may not have wanted culture wars on campus, what that organization had was a large organization that funded the ability to bring Charlie Kirk here. And so as an institution, us looking onto some of the rules and regulations and policies that our clubs and organizations have for our students, and understanding that while any student has the chance to bring a speaker to campus as long as they're following guidelines, they may not, because of the cultural barriers set in place by the country that we live in, they may not have the opportunity to bring those there. So I think echoing what one of the students said is encouraging the university to bring some more culturally diverse speakers onto campus that are going to be promoting growth in any type of way that's going to be positive.
Thank you, Capri. We have Gabriella. Your hand was up.
Yeah, I actually have to go. I am the Student Events Advisory Board Chair. As Sandy mentioned earlier, we do not have the power to approve events or reject events based on their content. However, if you have other feedback for me regarding SCAB and how we review events, I would love to hear it. You can definitely send us an email at clubs@unr.edu and we will review that. And unfortunately, I do have to run because I have another meeting, but thank you all for sharing your experiences. I know that conversations like this are not easy, and yeah, so thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Well, let me stop. Let me kind of bring us to a point here first. So while our processes are that it's hard to keep these type of groups away, how do we help our students feel safe and supported while these type of events are going on campus? What can we do to keep them feeling comfortable about being here? So anyone could answer that, that would be great.
So I saw in the chat that someone mentioned even the designated safe spaces were kind of infiltrated that night. And I remember that happening too. So I think if we could at least keep those safe spaces like completely protected, that'll definitely give us, you know, like a retreat somewhere to go to and to talk to other people as these, you know, events or any situations are kind of happening. So I think that should be the bare minimum, is keeping those designated safe spaces safe. Because it was kind of scary and jarring to think that like people would even go into those spaces and ruin it and try to make a statement that way. So yeah, that's what I would say.
I think personally, it worked very well for me when I was able to use Campus Cadet. Luckily there was one like 2 minutes away. I was in it and I was going and I was off to my dorm because I did not want to be around that situation because it was already uncomfortable enough.
Ray, did you have something? Is your hand up or just your
Oh
pen?
no, I was just, you know, chilling.
I think I saw I'm not sure if he's still here. It's hard for me to go through. Is the police chief still here?
There's also a few people that have their hands up.
Okay, I can't see them. So Todd, you want to jump in real quick and kind of maybe your thoughts about this and the safe zones and things like that?
Yeah, you know, one of our primary missions, because of our mission here at the university, is to make sure that these dialogues can happen, and our role is one of public safety for both sides. It gets a little challenging for us when we're dealing with free speech and constitutional issues. We've done a lot of internal discussion talks amongst ourselves of how we can address some of these issues that we've been hearing. We've heard these same issues, obviously, right after we had some of these events last year. So we've been working at trying to do that. The safe spaces, you know, getting those involved in those safe spaces, such as the center, you know, maybe shutting the doors and allowing students only in would be an option, but these are all things that we can certainly continue to discuss and figure out creative ways to make these happen. So I'm always open for that.
Thank you, Todd. Appreciate it. Anyone else? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So the one thing that night when the event happened, I was participating in a counter event, which was called Resist Hate. And so during that, one thing that I guess I did like is that there was an opportunity to be, I guess, be in a space where people were doing the complete opposite, where, you know, it was like promoted poetry and just diversity and actually caring about people. So I did like that. But then one question I did ask is, so since ASUN doesn't have the ability to approve and disapprove events, who does have the ability to stop hate groups from coming to our campus and speaking?
So you guys, we do have to, we have a time constraint here, so we still have 2 questions left. If we can move on to those next 2. Any follow-up comments that you have or questions, go ahead and include them in the chat. There will be future town halls, and of course we do want to address all of the discussion that's happening here. So go ahead and just include that in the chat, and we'll make note of it if that's okay, so we can move on to our following questions too. Is there anything else you wanted to add, Dean Eastonbrooks?
Yeah, just quickly, I think the question to this last question is just should be real short. Can we stop? Can we really stop people from coming to campus?
Yeah, that's certainly a hard question, because again, it goes back to that nature of discipline, where it's like how far can we take filtering? And I don't know, I mean, does anybody else want to pitch in on that?
So I've taken a First Amendment course in the J School, and the topic at hand is difficult to navigate since hate speech is technically protected by the First Amendment. I think, though, with that being said, even if the the university cannot stop these hate groups from coming in fear of getting a lawsuit from these organizations dealing with First Amendment issues. That at least the least thing the university could have done is not, they don't send out a letter or something saying they don't condone what these groups are advocating for. That was the least they can do.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to the next question now. How can we educate allies to be authentic rather than performative? And any of our panelists can chip in.
Can I go first? Sorry. So I don't personally think you can educate anyone in regards to being authentic. Authenticity is individual, and what that individual believes is authentic. I believe it's up to the individual to educate themselves on whatever they're interested in or want to know more about. So yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So I guess I have two things. The first thing is just I don't know, like I've been in like prior discussions and especially like with the mural that just went up on the Sierra Hall. And so the one thing I kept hearing was that the people who are involved in it had good intentions. But the thing is, like, white people have good intentions, but the people of color are the ones who have to live with the consequences of those. So making sure that you have people of color involved in these conversations, that you're like, instead of trying to do stuff for people, like a white savior, do stuff with people. And therefore you wouldn't have these conflicts. Yeah, and it's also like, there's already like resources and stuff in place. So there's no need to go out and create like a new organization or anything like that when there's Black people and people of color already have organizations that you could join.
Any of our panelists want to say something on that?
I will. So I was thinking this exact same thing as Brittany. Like, you can't teach authenticity. It's something very personal. So I think what people have to do is like take a step back, look at your values. Are these the values that you want to uphold? Like, do you truly believe in them? And then look at your actions. Make sure your behaviors are matching your values. And that's all there is to authenticity, I think. So I know, like, on Twitter especially, a lot of people are getting called out for posting the Black picture, the Blackout Tuesday, and then like 3 weeks later they post a Trump 2020 campaign banner. Those are very conflicting ideals. I mean, it's obvious to everyone. So that those individuals individually need to, you know, check their own values and check their behaviors. And I think a lot of people are kind of, how did I put this? Kind of fearful of the movement right now, or kind of wary of it, because they're not wanting to commit fully to it, because they're like, well, you know, maybe they are a Trump supporter, but they also believe that Black Lives Matter, but they're not realizing that those values clash. And so I think a lot of people are not wanting to commit fully to the movement or to their values, because maybe there's a disconnect between their values and their behaviors. So that's what I'm trying to say.
I would agree with what everyone has mentioned, that you really can't teach authenticity. But I think, like, kind of as I mentioned prior, it's just like when you first start your class on day one, make it super clear about what you stand for. And as a professor or administrator or whoever, like, it might be hard for you to be like, okay, this person said something. I know I should say something. I know it's wrong, but I don't want to deal with conflict. You kind of have to, like, if you actually care, you have to put yourself out of there, saying, no, we went through it. You're not about to do this. Get out of my class, you know? So it just kind of takes you to put yourself out there and put yourself in an uncomfortable position to make other people of color and minorities comfortable.
Samora, did you have something to add? Okay, we can open it up to the audience if anyone else has anything to say. I think a lot of this too, when we're talking about self-reflection, a lot of it is reflection on what your intentions are. When you're making a move and you're doing something and you're trying to be an advocate, who are you advocating for? Is it for your own benefit and how people view your social values, or is it actually meant to produce some kind of action? Taylor, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I see this problem with housing a lot of times. So as mentioned, I am an RA, and I will still be continuing with that position this year as well. One issue that I see with it is a lot of the RAs are more performative than true allies in a sense. I know housing teaches us how to navigate different identities and microaggressions and all sorts of things and issues and problems with identity, but similar to the issues that my other panelists have mentioned, they're not authentic, and oftentimes when they aren't being authentic and they aren't listening to the students of color who are being affected, those students of color, they feel as though no one's on their side, and two, that's going to make them more inclined to transfer out to a university that does inherently want them and want them to feel better about themselves. So I think I just wanted to add that perspective. I don't think there's necessarily a solution to this, but it's something to definitely think about.
Do any of our audience members want to elaborate on that or speak on just the question in general?
So I'm going to jump in. This is Adam Kern in the College of Engineering. Every panelist has expressed fear, exclusion, not belonging in their classroom environments. And as Dr. Cross mentioned, that's something we've got to acknowledge. And Prison mentioned this in their comment as well, of that students and faculty and staff are uncomfortable on campus. And the university's got to act to support students, and not just one time when you're socially pressured to do this. Looking at the F1 visa conversation where students are under threat of deportation and fear, I'm a grad faculty rep, and I've heard nothing from the university about what's happening other than when I've reached out. And the fact that there's inconsistent communication and responses happening tells me that there's something broken in the system. And so I think thinking about the ways that we're acting, the ways that we're advocating for change need to be clear and concise to students. And so I think part of what I would love to hear from the panel is actions you want to see us be your accomplices in making happen, actions that you want to see us be your allies in making happen on campus. Because I'm afforded privileges into certain spaces that many on the panel, many in this room are not because of who I am. And so I would love to hear the things that y'all would love to see someone be your advocate for, your accomplice for, your ally for anyone in this room who's had those feelings, who continues to have those feelings on a daily basis.
This is Shannon. Adam, I just want to make sure that you're up to speed. We contacted every graduate student, every undergraduate student. We also contacted specifically every international student, both grad and undergrad, within 24 hours of what was a very surprising announcement. We have been offering counseling sessions and support through our Office for International Students and Scholars 24/7 this week, and students have been taking advantage of it. We have 3 different forums scheduled for next week. One for international graduate students, one for international undergraduate students, one for faculty and staff. And all of that it's on the website. We've sent it out to students at least twice. We sent it out to the whole campus yesterday or the day before. So I don't want people to leave here I don't want you to think that we don't care and we aren't doing something. We have done a lot. We're going to do a lot more. And this is very important for you to hear, because I do not want you out there losing credibility by not knowing what's going on. So I just needed to interject that.
So
Adam
Shannon,
asks a great question.
Yep.
It's a broader question, but I think it also provides an important template, what Adam is raising. What are the things that we can continue to do for you on this call today that might resonate. So I appreciate him raising it, but I really want you all to know what has been going on and what will continue to go on. That's all. I say it with respect, and I know Adam's intent is to be helpful.
So Shannon, part of why I asked that question is I am a direct advocate and ally to many students on campus, particularly our minoritized and historically underserved students. And I have been sent nothing as a graduate program coordinator, and I know other graduate program coordinators have also been sent nothing, and this is leaving the burden on students. And
Okay,
so
I will talk to Dean Zay because
This is Jill Heaton, Vice Provost for Faculty Affairs, and David Zay is my Vice Provost colleague. Adam, I will forward it to you, and I will confirm to see if you are on the email list, because Tuesday a message went out to all of the graduate directors, the deans, the chairs, the associate deans. And so I want to make sure you're on that list, because if you are a graduate program director for an academic unit here on campus, you should have received that. So I will follow up and make sure that that is the case.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I'd love to hear from the panel too in this space of continued action, continued allyship, of how we continue to step forward and advocate for the things that need to happen on campus.
Let me just step in here real quick before we do that, Adam. Sorry, Miranda. We have to understand as communicators, as educators, as whatever, just because we present something doesn't mean it's received. And how we present it and where we present it makes a huge, huge difference. And we have to think about those avenues. And one of the young ladies mentioned it before about who's sending the message and how the message is coming across. It is very important as leadership we understand that and understand that we're taking the right avenues to get the right information to the right people so that we can support and advocate for our students in our community. Intent is great. I think messaging is great, but we have to make sure that when we do that, it's effective communication.
And can I just share something? So one thing that I did appreciate was when I myself got together with a few different Black student leaders on campus and issued out a public platform and statement, and the university responded right away to what we had and what we were requesting to be changed. I just want to say thank you for that, because things like that and taking actions like that, having the university actually listen to our platform and listen to our campaign and what we were trying to get across really helped as a minority student. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, when you see that these students are asking for help, like automatically getting on it, responding right away, and just taking accountability and action for what students are asking you to do.
If you're able, Dean Easton-Brooks, you want to go into the last question here, and we'll just open it up to the panelists since we do have a time crunch here.
Sure, no problem. So again, I will say the last question is, if a class that addressed identity of Black students was to exist on the college campus in the first year, and all first-year students were required to take it, what would that class look like? For example, what steps should be taken? Who should be involved in creating the curriculum? And for this class, how do we ensure that students take the course seriously?
Just to start that question up, for me, I would like the curriculum to include Black history and Black America. I would expect to learn more about Black America besides MLK, Malcolm X, and Rosa Parks, although they are great figures. I also want to know more about, like, the Black Wall Street Journal, Juneteenth, who W.E.B. Du Bois is, historically Black colleges and how they came about. I also would like for students to learn about the Harlem Renaissance, and then also like current topics such as what's going on with the Aunt Jemima pancakes box and Uncle Ben. So that's how I would personally like the class to be structured and what I would want to learn out of that class. I would also like Black faculty and like people teaching these classes, because I feel like that's just more personal and you get a better learning experience out of that as well.
I would like to just add on to what Brittany was saying. making sure that there's actually Black people teaching the class. I remember I took a diversity class with Jody and I loved it, and then I told my friend to take it, and there was another professor teaching it, and they were white, and it was just, she just had a bad experience. I felt bad for telling her to take a class like this when the professor did not even fully understand and grasp the concepts that they were supposed to be teaching. So making sure a Black person is actually teaching that class is important, but also I want to make sure there's intersectionalities of Blackness involved in it. So I took one of my English classes I took, but I learned a lot about like just like Black Caribbeans and Afro Latinx and in America, and also just how the intersectionalities of the LGBTQ community and how Blackness is not just like monolithic. That's probably the wrong word. Just one thing, but it can be a variety of things, and there's a lot of different intersections of it.
Excellent point.
I agree. I would love to learn about like have people learn about Black Wall Street, Black Panthers, the civil rights movements, and the civil rights movements going on now. I think also maybe incorporating our own history at UNR, our Black history at UNR, into that course would help as well, like Colin Kaepernick and other famous or campus famous African American figures who have graduated here. I think that can also make students realize sort of one, that this university cares, two, that they can become like these people in the future, and three, understanding where people of color are coming from. But I also want to add that I think that this conversation needs to be broader than just African Americans, because the fact that we are not the only marginalized group. LGBT people are marginalized on this campus. Jewish people are marginalized on this campus. Latinx people are marginalized on this campus. I think if we would do a class, it needs to incorporate all of that. But focusing more on what the question was, which is the Black experience. Black people need to be a part of it. It cannot just be, I guess, a random like white person teaching it. It cannot just be a random white students coming in. I think by having Black students come in and greet each other, or Black professors coming in and talking about different professions and how they navigate through their Blackness in their profession would be beneficial.
I would kind of continue on the thoughts that everyone has mentioned. I think in order for us to truly somewhat truly give people an understanding of racism like that, it's going to take a strategy approach. There's this class that's taught at a college in Florida that's called White Racism, and this is its course description, which I believe that should be somewhat included into what we're trying to do. So it says, in this course, we will interrogate the concept of race, examine the racist ideologies, laws, practices that have operated for hundreds of years to maintain white domination over those racialized groups as non-white, and discuss ways to disrupt white racism and dethrone white supremacy in the service of endangering an anti-racist society where whiteness is no longer tied to a greater life chances. And so many people think we're living in a post-racist society, but we're really not. I really can't blame them, because growing up in high school, we were taught, oh, Martin Luther King marched, and then the Civil Rights Act was passed, and then now we're all good. No, it's not all good. And if you don't really experience that, you really don't understand that. So we have to break down racism. People have to understand that it is systematically, it's institutional, that through the police department and through the educational system and through mass incarceration, there's multiple aspects of racism. And it's not just people just being like, oh, I don't like you because you're Black. Our own system is doing this to us.
I also have one thing to add. I don't know whether the class is targeted more for Black students or educating people who are non-Black, but I guess if it was focused more on just Black students, I would really love for there to be topics besides racism. I think in a lot of my classes, all we do is talk about racism, but I want to address topics such as colorism and texturism and other things that affect the Black community as well. And I feel like in a lot of my classes, we can't even get past racism is real. So just to have a space where we can go beyond that and talk about different issues.
Less of a deficit framework. Anyone else?
Oh, okay. I'll add to this question too. Oh, I have my video off. Okay, so as much as I hate to say it, when I saw this question, I was kind of like, a class that everyone has to take that's about Black students, I can already imagine the hate that it'll get. Like people being, this is so stupid, why do I have to take it? I'm not even Black, I don't care. And then it just creates more negativity than it's trying to prevent. So I like Taylor's idea. If we're going to do a first year student class that it encompasses all marginalized groups, I think that would be awesome, especially if it's a whole semester long. There's a lot that you can fit in there. And then the idea that was brought up by Michael in the last town hall meeting was more of doing the same idea, but putting it as a My Nevada to-do list task. So you could still set it up where it's like a mini class. So you have to go through, book excerpts or essays or videos, and then kind of have small assessments. So it's like, I think it was like that alcohol wise class that's already in our to-do list. So if we had something like that, and that was just Black focused, I think that'll be a lot more digestible for everyone on campus and a lot more like ready to implement soon than creating a whole new class and new curriculum. But as far as who should be involved in creating it, I feel like all Black students would be honored if you asked them, like, can you give your 2 cents on this curriculum, and then kind of include them in the process. I think that would be beautiful. And then using the professors that we already have and the deans that we already have, that whole collaboration, I can already see that as something so effective and fun to do. So that's what I have to say.
All right, excellent. But I think, again, that's one of these questions that, it's kind of a broad one, but it's something you to kind of really think about. And as you all mentioned, that it's something that maybe we look at across groups, and how do we think about these things across groups so that we can better understand each other and better understand what goes on with each other and some of the challenges that we face as we try to navigate this. It helps us to, answer better who we are as a collective whole. I think that Colin said it great as he started the conversation. He came to campus with a tone in his voice that was different than anticipated. And so with that, all the negative stereotypes of what he should be were lost. And I think a lot of that happens because of the unawareness that there are differences happen for different reasons, and there are differences in the way we present ourselves because of different reasons. But knowing our history is important to understand why those different histories exist. And we have to figure out a way to help one another to come to a conclusion of recognizing what we bring to the table, those good, great, positive things, that diversity, and at the same time understand that there are challenges that we face that we're not looking for, but present themselves to us, that we need to have a space and a system that doesn't create barriers for us to just exist but just walking across campus. So I'm going to turn this over to Miranda, but I really want to appreciate you all for being a part of this and kind of help to educate our community.
Thank you. Yeah, so we are unfortunately out of time for today. And again, we can't thank you all enough for attending this town hall and genuinely engaging in this conversation. Especially to our panelists, what you shared today is powerful and it's meaningful and it's insightful, and that deserves the utmost acknowledgement. So thank you. And as I mentioned in the beginning, this town hall is part of my department's Proud to be Blank at Nevada campaign, with this first month's focus being on Black students. So the goal is, to create a platform for UNR students from all backgrounds to share their testimonies and experiences as a means for a true empathetic perspective. So throughout each month, we'll be posting student features on the social media pages. And then at the end of each month, we'll be posting a blog page with student stories and relevant articles and resources. I hope you'll leave today's discussion feeling enlightened and educated. And I highly, highly encourage you to really reflect on this conversation, both internally and externally. Please share the knowledge, share the perspective. These conversations are extremely valuable beyond this platform too. And we ended up discussing a plethora of topics that extended beyond the structure we had set for today. So I think that's very telling of how necessary and effective these conversations are too. And then one final quick reminder, we are posting a link again to our post-assessment survey in the chat for today's town hall. We'd be really appreciative if you could take a moment to fill that out. We do rely on them heavily to inform us for future town halls and also address any questions or comments and concerns you have, especially if there are topics you wanted to discuss more. That's a great way to let us know. Outside of that, please feel free to contact our department by emailing Director Bajwa at diversitydirector@asun.unr.edu. And that's all we have for you today. So yeah, thank you so much, you guys, and have a great day.